been carrying wisdom like a loaded page, years of miles, scars, lesson engraved. You did the work, you earned the view, but the numbers haven't followed you. You've got stories worth more than likes, vision sharper than a million mics. It's not about grinding louder now, it's time to change the how. You don't need another hustle plan, you need a signal people understand. Build a brand that works as hard as you.
You need a signal people can understand, and what a fabulous conversation we have centered around understanding our message and communication. My name is Mariko, and I am your host today. And let me tell you how excited I am. I really enjoy coaching, moderating, and producing these live events, so much so that I do this once a week, bring people together, share the stage with me, and we have some wonderful conversations centered around helping business owners and professionals own their own stage, whatever stage they are at. Today, we're hosting a live stream that is being watched and broadcast across LinkedIn, Substack, and YouTube. So feel free, drop your comments, engage. If you have questions for my guest, feel free to drop them in the comments. We look forward to answering your questions in real time. And for those of you who follow and come back, you know that I enjoy making these as immersive and interactive as possible. Now, my guest today is Waqas Rahman. I think I messed that up, and I even practiced it before we went live, and he's going to correct me here for a moment. He is an executive communication coach, and I'm excited to jump into this conversation and bring him on stage. Let us introduce, or allow him to introduce himself. Why don't we turn on the cameras? Waqas, turn on. Let's get your camera on, and let's get you on stage here. All right, and I will join you in just a second. How you doing? While I get my camera up and running, why don't you kick us off and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. This is Waqas, and my last name is Rahman. It's Arabic name. So you mess a little bit, but that's fine. Well, what I do is I make public speaking accessible to everyone, not only to those people who have a talent for it or have a skill for it. I make public speaking accessible to everyone so it can be used to convey your points, so that you can connect with the audience, convey your point in a manner that people can relate to you through storytelling, through your authentic self.
That is awesome. And do you particularly serve one niche, one market, one industry? Because when I look at your profile, I get the impression, I want you to keep me honest here and keep me humble. Executives in a particular industry. Tell us a little bit about who you work with.
Absolutely. My background is in tech. I came from engineering background, and I used to be a shy person. I'm introvert, so I represent people who are in tech, who are leaders, who have accomplished so much in their lives, but somehow when it's time to convey their points, their technical skills in a meeting full of executives in those high stake moments, they freeze. They can't wrap their head around how to overcome those nerves. So I coach those people, and this is what I'm doing, and this is what my passion nowadays.
That is awesome, because what you have just shared happens not only in boardrooms, but it happens pretty much most places in public. Sometimes we're caught off guard and we don't know how to respond. Sometimes it's on these live streams. We bring people in, and I have a school community that helps individuals who are overwhelmed with going live. Some of them freeze when they're on cameras. Some of them, in fact, most of them, they understand what they want to say, but that moment comes and it's like you just lock up. So I'm glad that we're going to dive into this conversation. You touched on most leaders struggling when it comes to communication. Why is it that? leaders struggle? Is it perhaps a junior leader, or do you see this right across junior, intermediate, and senior leadership?
Yeah, a lot of factors goes into why we get stuck when we are in those high stake moments. But the number one factor that I found through my own journey from this public speaking anxiety to where I am today is how our nervous system responds to those high stake situations. So our nervous system responds to any high stake moment in two ways. The first way is our nervous system by default would go into fight, flight, and freeze mode if we have not trained it in that fashion.
Oh, that darn amygdala.
Yep, yep. And the second mode that it responds to is the growth response. And the growth response is the one that makes us feel confident, that makes us feel that we want to accomplish something big, that makes us kind of resilient to future high stake moments. So once we understand what triggers our nervous system to either one of these responses, then we can move forward with taking some action to get over it.
Fantastic. So why don't we take a moment here, take an action to thank Leslie as well as Jackie, who have jumped in the comments to say hello. So thank you, ladies, for jumping in, saying hello to Waqas and myself. And as people join, I want to welcome you to drop comments and questions along the way. Now let's dive into more detail here. Have you seen this happen in a meeting or a presentation where something that someone is so familiar with, and all of a sudden they're just standing looking at the crowd, and the crowd's waiting for them to get started? You talked about that fight or flight. What is it in that moment in time that we can share that might be able to help someone, or what can we discuss that might help someone who is in that particular predicament?
I have been through that moment myself. If you'd like, I can share my own experience and what actually happened back then.
Let's hear it.
Okay. It was 2019, September in Rolla, Missouri. Since you are from Canada, so you might not know. So Missouri is a state in the Midwest. And I came to US in 2019 for my PhD, and I was there for my PhD studies in the University of Missouri. I was attending this event called the Celebration of Nations. I was representing our country, Pakistan. We had this booth. We had some amazing food items. We were selling biryani. Have you?
Oh, I love biryani.
Yeah, biryani. I was in charge of selling biryani. And we had a lot of items on our booth to showcase what Pakistani culture is about. I was having the fun time of my my, my day that day. And all of a sudden, when I see a group of people visiting each booth and asking the people who were representing those booths some questions, and that group of people was the media team from our university. When I looked at those people visiting each booth and asking questions individually to folks on the booth, my amygdala kicked in. My nervous system instantly got into this threat response, fight, freeze. And my plan, since I'm an introvert, I stayed invisible my entire life. My plan was to act as if I'm invisible, no one can see me, right? There was a plan that I thought should work because that has worked pretty well in my entire life. But that day, when they came to our booth, they asked me this simple question: "Hey there, how have your how was your experience living in Missouri so far?" Here's a simple question, right? I mean, I could have said anything: great, perfect, so far so good, something, right? But in that moment, when the media team had this giant video camera on their shoulders and this long mic in front of my face, I froze. The deer in the headlight moments just came in right in front of my eyes. In those moments, since I was representing my culture and the people, I mean, my friends who represented our culture, who spoke about our culture before me, did a great job. They were eloquent, they were clear. But it was my time, my turn. I wanted to kind of level up my game and give up like a coherent, cohesive response to that question. In those moments, I froze for about 10 ish seconds. And when I said something to in response, it was nothing but gibberish. It was some broken words here and there put together hastily and came out like garbage. That was my moment. I said I have to do something about it. This is not going to go like this anymore. And that's where my journey to overcome public speaking anxiety and helping others began. And that moment was a perfect textbook example of how a nervous system can get into that fight, flight, and freeze response.
That happens not only at the executive level, but we've all been job seekers at some point in our careers where we get invited to interviews in that same flight response, that moment where you know the answer to the question you're being asked and you just freeze. Listen, I want to thank you for sharing your personal story. I'm sure we all have stories. I too have examples, but this is about helping others with communication. So I'm going to park this here and I'm going to continue this conversation because I'm sure I'll have plenty of opportunity to share my examples. Now, you talk a lot about the gap between thinking and communicating.
Mhm.
Can you explain that to those who are listening? Uh, how can we simply break this down?
Absolutely. So the way I see communication is it has three layers. The number one and the core layer is your speaker identity. The second layer is the meat of your communication, the meat of your presentation. And the third layer is the how you deliver it, the way you stand in front of that group of people, the way you use your pauses, your hand gestures. So all these three layers contribute in a way that we either, I mean, if we have done a good job in all those three areas, then we can get that growth response from our nervous system. But what happens is that for people who have not worked on the speaker identity or the content piece of their presentations, what happens is that no matter how much they practice, no matter how much they polish their slide deck, no matter how many frameworks they have memorized for that presentation, when they get in front of that high stake audience, their nervous system instantly gets into that fight and flight response. And once it detects there's a threat in the room, it just hits the panic button. And once we are in that panic zone, we forget about all those frameworks. We forget about taking pauses. We forget about all those things that we have prepared for. So, this speaker identity piece that comes from how you see yourself as a person, how you see yourself as a presenter, like I'm touching on the self worth level of speaker identity. So if you have not worked on the inner circle, which is your speaker identity, which is based heavily on your self worth, your core limiting beliefs, your value systems, then that fight, flight, and freeze response is inevitable.
Excellent. Now, here's a question that I get myself caught up in so often. And when I'm being coached or when I'm coaching others, it works both ways. We have a tendency, and it's human nature, we want things to be perfect, despite everyone saying, don't wait for it's perfect. Focus on just getting started, start where you are, and work on developing it and improving. But at one point, and I still catch myself and try to change the mindset, trying to be not only perfect, but articulating something. And sometimes that message gets lost because we're trying to, to be perfect. We overcomplicate it, yet there's a rationale thinking, and people say it all the time, keep it simple. We've heard the acronym, keep it simple, silly, stupid, however you want to break down that acronym. Why do simpler ideas sometimes come across more convincing? Is it simply logic, or you keep it simple?
Thank you for that question. So the communication, I think there are a lot of myths, a lot of misconception about communication. Number one is to use technical jargon, to use advanced vocabulary, to use advanced sentence structure. But the moment we fell into that trap, it's hard for our audience to grasp that concept. Because if we're going to be using a lot of technical jargon, it's always the case that someone in the audience is not going to be able to understand that technical terms. Sometimes we also throw in some of the acronyms. So what I teach my clients is that to keep it as simple as you can, and always assume that someone in the audience is not going to be able to understand your technical terms. So make it as simple as you can. Keep it like simplest structure that you can find, so that there's a popular structure that you can use is the prep, point, reason, example, and point. That's for more for the impromptu speaking situations. Give your point, give a reason, give example, give your point. So the simpler you can make it, the easier it'll be communicated in those high stake moments. And your brain is going to be able to process the information, and same for you as well as for the audience. Because in those high stake moments, we can fall into that trap of uh, preparing something really complicated, but then we have that fight, flight, and freeze response mode, and we cannot recall all those things that we have prepared for. So simplest things, simplest ideas always win.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when asked, many people say we become our biggest obstacles and we get inside our own heads. And I've experienced this myself, and I'm sure many people have examples where you find yourself with extreme confidence, and simply because you're so focused and dialed in on what you think others might be thinking,
Mm,
you somehow get into this trap where your confidence, uh, you don't want to water down your confidence by keeping it simple. Yet the simple response and the simple action is to keep it simple. Yet we have such a hard time separating the two. We want to be able to impress. You hear people talking about, what it takes to climb a corporate ladder. You want to impress the stakeholders. Know your audience, is a terminology that many of us use and understand. Know your audience. And when you're in a boardroom, or when you are with, whether it's mass affluent people, decision makers, you want to impress. And often that confidence gets in the way and we stumble on our words. We kind of talk off lane, and we got to bring ourselves back in. Like, how do we help ourselves in keeping things simple? Because we all see it, we all hear it, everyone is talking about it, keep it simple. But it's easier said than it is done, isn't it?
definitely. And I'll just piggyback on the thing that you said, that we stumble and then things might go south. So what happens is that it's not that if you will stumble, you will stumble. The thing is that how are you going to react or respond in that situation? That's what you need to train yourself for. You will stumble, but are you ready to recover from that position? And I think that you mentioned about being judged, the fear of mind going blank. All those things are essentially your nervous system getting triggered into this threat mode when you have all those deeply rooted belief system, like people are always judging me negatively, or I don't have anything important to say to my audience. So all those self-limiting belief and your mindset plays a huge role in deciding whether your nervous system is going to be getting into that threat response versus the growth response. So your speaker identity is the core and the heart of your entire experience on stage.
Yeah. So what you're telling me resonates with me because I emulate a similar response, and I tell people that it's more important on how you respond and how you react than actually mixing your words and messing up, because people are curious to see how you respond, how you get yourself back into that lane, and how you recover. Because you're right, we're all going to make mistakes, and in fact, some coaches that you people work with encourage you to make mistakes. Hey, mistakes are inevitable. Let's get them out of the way. Let's make those mistakes. Let's learn from them, and let's readjust, get back in our lane, and focus on what we're going to do differently next time.
Let me totally be honest with you here. When I started this podcast, this LinkedIn Live today,
Hmm.
I'm not in my best game today here. I'm making ton of mistakes. You guys might have noticed that. I'm tripping my train of thought. I'm using fillers here and there. But if I let that affect my experience for the rest of this 40 minutes, it's going to destroy that anyway. So if you have those beliefs, making mistakes is wrong. Making mistakes will make you rejected. Making mistakes will get you alienated. Those core beliefs that define your speaker identity, that plays a huge role how you show up in those high stake moments, regardless if it's a boardroom or a stage or any normal conversation with your boss one to one.
I
So
love it.
because of the mindset I have developed in the past few years, I don't care if someone is judging me in the audience. I know people will always judge. Some people will always judge, not all, some people. But I don't really care about that because that does not define my self worth. My self worth is defined how I see myself in the mirror.
That's wonderful. Which kind of, uh, well, I connect the pieces and say, to piggyback on what you just explained, done beats perfect every time. Yes, not these events aren't going to be perfect consecutively. There are going to be events that perhaps are ill-timed. You had a stressful day, something happened that may have triggered a response that now has you focused somewhere else, and that's going to happen. That's just being human. Things are going to pop up unexpectedly, and you have to just forge through it and not worry. And there will come a time where if you get called out on it, you own it. It's like, yeah, it wasn't my best performance. It wasn't
That's
my
that's
best
how you learn.
conversation.
That's how you learn.
That's how you learn.
Mistakes.
And own the mistakes if it's a mistake. And if it's not a mistake, but it's not your best performance, own that as well. There's no shame in
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And it's freaking hot here in Denver, 86 degrees, and that's why I'm using my tissue to kind of
Oh, I envy you. We were talking before we went live.
yeah.
I envy 80s. We have an extreme short, hot season, and we're just anxiously waiting for our first day of 80 plus weather. Now let's get back on track here. You say to focus on what happens before someone speaks. What does that mean to focus on before you speak?
That's a great question. Uh, there are three aspects that I see what you can focus on before you get on that stage, you get in front of that boardroom. Number one is the preparation piece. I mean, there is no shortcut to your preparation and rehearsal. You have to prepare, you have to rehearse. There's no shortcut to that. But what I see is the common struggle is that people would only rely on practicing, sometimes over practicing, and not putting more effort towards what goes into that presentation. For example, the presentation itself can consist of your storytelling abilities. It can consist of metaphors. It can consist of analogies, examples, data. Just having some abstract ideas on slides is not going to get you an excellent performance from that presentation, no matter how much you practice. So the practice is one piece. Second piece is the content of your presentation or your whatever talk that you're gonna be preparing for. And that content piece is as important as the practice. And the third layer is that, like, have you ever reflected on what triggers those nerves? What triggers the fight, flight, and freeze response in those high stake moments? If you don't have that, you're lucky. But if you have that kind of response, have you reflected on that? Have you found a resource on that? Have you seek guidance on that? Like, what triggers that anxiety? What triggers your nervous system to go into that fight, flight, and freeze response? Is it something that happened 20 years ago? Is it something that your boss might have said 2 years ago? And it's still kind of, you're carrying this baggage in behind of your in your mind somewhere. So these three pieces: practice, content, and your speaker identity essentially defines your nervous system response in those high stake moments. So we don't, I mean, we can't really turn a blind eye on each, like any of these three components. We have to kind of be fully prepared on all these three aspects before we actually feel our confidence and confident version in that moment.
Okay, can we add? You mentioned three, and I think there's a fourth, and maybe we'll discuss it a little later on, or you might have an example. But I think now's a good time. Whether it's a virtual event, whether it's an on camera, off camera, an audio event, or a real life event, how much of the preparation it should be focused on body language, posturing. It's the confidence can be defined in so many ways. You can have a wonderful message, talk about a subject matter that everyone is totally focused and engaged on. But if you're slouched and you sound disinterested in something that you're supposed to be passionate about, or perhaps your your voice is crackling, you're on an audio event and you don't really sound your best, how much of that should people really focus on? Because there are, two sides to this argument. Some people say, just show up as you are, how you are, how you sound shouldn't really matter. And then there are those who really advocate. It's like, no, your body language, your posture, you really got to, in order to be confident, you got to sound confident and look confident.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have two-pronged response to that question. The first aspect is that if you have a really great story that has a really monumental idea from your story that can change thousands and possibly hundreds and thousands of people's lives, your body language, your hand gestures, your fillers, they don't matter. You might have seen a lot of TEDx speeches in which the speaker solely focuses on their story without focusing anything about the way they are standing, the way they're using their hand gestures, or either they're using filler words or not. But their story is powerful, and you might see millions of views on those TEDx talks, right? And the second aspect is that think of public speaking as a muscle. And I'm going to give you an analogy of your physical muscles. You can't expect to go to gym once a month and then have six pack. That doesn't happen, right? So think of public speaking as a muscle that you have to train for, using the way you stand on stage, the way you naturally use your hand gestures, the way you maintain eye contact with the audience, the way you kind of get clear. So think of it as a muscle that you have to train at least once a week. You can't just do it once or twice a year and then expect to be a great communicator. That doesn't really happen. And you have to practice like you would train for your physical muscles intentionally.
So I'm going to use an example here. I do go to the gym once a month and I am in shape. Round. Round is my shape, right? Now, I use this example purposefully and openly, and there's an intent behind it. Breaking the ice. Sometimes you got to feel your room.
Yeah.
How can someone put themselves in a comfortable position? I use the icebreaker, the little comedy routine, something
Uh-huh.
smarmy, something funny, and you kind of get a tone and a feel for the room. It's like, all right, they that landed like a lead balloon. You
Yep.
know what to stay away from, or you got a couple of chuckles, you got a couple of smiles
Yeah.
from that gym comment. All right, now you know that your room or your audience has your attention. You have their attention, and that sometimes changes the entire dynamic and puts someone at ease. But there's also that when it's too much, too much.
Yep. Agree.
So, what are your thoughts on those icebreakers at the start of a conversation and those intermissions where people pause and throw in a wisecrack like I did? Is that something
I
that
would,
you encourage or
I would,
discourage?
I would encourage in normal conversations, but I would discourage from using a joke in those high stake talks or presentations, because if your joke falls flat, it will make an already nerve wracking situation worse. And it'll be harder for you to recover from that position. So, in normal conversations, absolutely, it's a great way to break the ice.
So, just for the record, Amy thinks that round is a shape. So, we got one person who's at least agreeing with me.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah,
And
you're right. It can backfire, and you got to be prepared to react and respond.
so I'm going to give you an example. So, the start of any talk in those first 60 to 90 seconds, that's the moment your anxiety, your nerves spike. Not only for me, for everybody, even for experienced speakers. I mean, they might not tell you, but every speaker in this world, they feel that surge of nerves in that moment when they get on the stage and when before they open their mouth for at least 60 to 90 seconds, right? But if you're planning to open with a mediocre joke, which you think will will land, but what if it doesn't land? What if no one laughs at your joke? Then it will add on top of that nerve-wracking situation, that anxiety spike, and it will be harder for you to recover from that. So that's why I said I will not encourage in those high stake moments.
Yeah, fair enough. And I did this. It wasn't scripted. It just kind of fit in, and it tied in nicely with the
No,
question.
it's absolutely fine in this situation.
Yeah,
I
no,
love
but
it.
that's great advice. So this brings me to the next question. So, what is this? The one small thing, the one small change that you can advise people to make to sound clearer and feel right at that moment? So you got your 60 to 90 seconds, as you pointed out, and some people just get that adrenaline hit, some get that dopamine hit, and others, they just at the 60 or 90 seconds, they find themselves struggling. So, what small changes can we help our listeners with at this point?
One simple trick that you could use is prepare the first few moments, the first at least 1 to 2 minutes of your talk, presentation, or something that you prepared for to speak in a meeting way more than the rest of your experience, the rest of your presentation. And also the last few minutes, maybe when you talk about concluding your argument and giving people some CDAs, some call to action, prepare those more than the rest of the presentation. In the beginning, it will help you stay on track because of that spike in the nerve. If you're well prepared, you can get through that spike. And towards the end, most audience members, I mean, all of us, we want to know what we should take away from this conversation, from this presentation. So have a crystal clear takeaways that you want to give them so that they can go back and they can implement in their lives and they can get something of a practical value out of it.
Fabulous. Now, I'm going to split this, and feel free to answer it as best you can, or take one side or the other as the example. So there's different types of conversations, venues that take place. In many cases, let's use webinars, conferences. It's usually a conversation where it's one to many, but in a more uh, subtle or smaller environment, it's more immersive, more interactive, and you have the opportunity to perhaps have some Q&A. Those who struggle, whether they're introverts or they just struggle with public speaking or with communication, would you encourage or invite them to try to, when the opportunity is right, try to encourage Q&A, get the those who are listening, get the audience involved, asking them questions, just to break up that anxiety?
Yeah, that's also a technique some speakers use when they feel like they are having that mind going blank moment, they will ask a question in the audience: are you guys getting this? Or what we've discussed so far, what are the key takeaways? Can someone tell me that? So involving your audience in that moment, it kind of puts pressure off of you in that moment when you're having that you know, mind going blank or losing the train of thought. So it is a good technique to involve your audience, and you can also be honest with them. You know, I'm having a brain fart. Can you guys remind me where I was? Someone in the audience might help you in that moment. So brain mind going blank is not the problem. The way you react or respond to it, that's what is of importance here.
All right, that I'm going to lean into something that you touched on. Brain fog, brain farts, they happen. You're absolutely right. Now, how do we help people stay calm, stay focused during these high pressure moments? Now, they may not be high pressure for anyone, with the exception of the one person who's standing there speaking. Are there breathing exercises? There are breathing coaches. There are so many opportunities that people advocate, people coach, and people pay to get help. You might even provide that in some of your value propositions and offerings in your workshops. But what are your thoughts on, staying calm? Is it about breathing? Is it a mindset? What can we uncover here?
Great question. So the way I see it, those breathing exercises, I want to expand even beyond breathing exercises. Breathing exercises, mantras, affirmations. Some people might use some medication like beta blockers, or it could be something else. The way I see those techniques, they can help you in the moment, but they cannot relieve you of the tension and stress in the future. That will happen again. So, what I teach my clients, I'm not your typical vanilla communication coach. I mean, I don't really focus too much on removing fillers, power poses, the way you kind of use your voice tonality in those high stake moments. The way I work with my clients is deeply rooted into how we can summon this confidence from within that does not rely on external factors such as audiences validation, such as kind of trying to use something else like breathing or something to help in that situation. What I guarantee my clients is that after working on the nervous system level of confidence, the confidence will be guaranteed because now you understand yourself better, you understand your nervous system better, how it responds in those two different ways that I described earlier. So by working on that core level of confidence, that's where you get the long-term results. You can use deep breathing, that will help in the moment for sure, but you cannot really rely on it for all of your future instances or experiences.
So Amy's adding in, and I think this is a great time to bring up her comment. Isn't this even a good tactic to get your audience involved? I think it's
Like,
also something that you can implement at that moment in time. So thanks for bringing that up, Amy. In terms of, see, now I got frozen there for a second. See, it happens to all of us.
Really, that happens. I mean, that happens. The way you recover, that what matters.
And here's the recovery. How should someone, and this is like beautiful because it ties into the question. How does someone respond when they lose their train of thought mid sentence? Here I am having a conversation with you. My next question is queued up, and it almost feels like I rehearsed this. I pause there for a second, and I have lost my train of thought. And this happens often. This happens frequently to many people. How do we help those who lose their train of thought mid stride?
Yeah, one way, as I mentioned a little bit previously as well, is to you can involve your audience. You can be honest about that. You can be as honest as, sorry, I'm having a brain fart here. Would you remind what I discussed a moment ago? And almost always someone will help you what you discussed before. And once you know that part, you will automatically and most likely get back on track, and remember what you were supposed to say next. And that will also give you a moment to kind of reflect and think, what was I what was I planning to say next, right?
Yeah. So when I was working, there were techniques that we got in leadership training when I was in uh, during my academic years, similar mindset and training exercises to help people, especially when it came to complex conversations or complex theory. Um, how do we help ourselves explain something that might be complex, but in a simple format? And I always remember, come up with an acronym,
Mm.
and those acronyms. And I know there's
Yep.
conversations that can be had in either direction on people's thoughts and appetite for acronyms. We have more acronyms than we care to imagine. But when it comes to public speaking, rather than remembering a whole chapter of a book, if you're the author, or remembering an entire presentation that you've rehearsed, you've written down, you have your slide deck, but you don't want to stand there and read it verbatim, I was always taught come up with an acronym where each letter depicts a talking point.
I would like to piggyback on that.
Yes,
If
go ahead.
if you don't want to memorize acronyms, an easy way that I found is that just take a small piece of paper like this, my size, your notepad, just write the key words that you want to convey in that presentation or talk or whatever. If you have, let's say, if you have prepared three key points to deliver in that 10 or 20 minutes talk, just write those three key points and then expand on those key points in that experience. So we have the intro, the hook, then we have first point, evidence. Evidence could be your example, analogy, metaphor, your personal story, a story of someone else that you know that is really relevant to this point. Then move on to the second point. Same point, some evidence, which is again examples, metaphors, analogies, and so on, and get done with all those 3 points. But you can have those key points at the palm of your hand in that notepad. And then eventually, towards the end, summarize those 3 points, give the audience takeaways, what they can go right now and implement in their lives, in their careers, in their whatever they are passionate about doing. So that way is way simpler, way easier, and you don't need to kind of use those long notes when you're presenting. I mean, first of all, if you are stuck in that reading those notes, I mean, first of all, it's not recommended. You don't need, you're not supposed to kind of put chunks of text on the slide and then read through the slide.
Right.
That's not presentation. That's kind of doing the
That's
audible
pu-
reading.
yeah, fair enough. Nobody likes those presentations where someone just stands there and reads the slides to us.
And also, when you're reading, you are turning your face, you're turning your back towards the audience, and the audience
Yes.
is not there to see your back. They want to see your face. They want to see those beautiful hand gestures and the way you exude energy in that room. So don't just look at the slide and turn your back towards the audience. That's not recommended at all.
I totally agree. Not all of us have that budget to have a teleprompter, and most of us end up turning our backs to our audience. So great tips there. Now, I want to spend a few moments talking about redistributing and reinventing a message. We talk about storytelling, we talk about public speaking, and when it comes to live streaming, for instance, I I coach and I advocate. Hey, when people don't show up to your live event, it's not the end of your message. We're
Hmm.
going to repurpose this. We're going to write a blog post. We're going to create short video content to draw people and try to hook those people to come and listen to the conversation we have. And when it comes to public speaking, some of us find confidence in talking, and articulating our message in person. And then we take that message, and for instance, if it finds its way to LinkedIn, to Substack, or Medium, or another outlet, and you hear crickets, that starts to play mind games with people. It's like, wow, maybe my conversation wasn't as good as I had thought. Maybe my and you start to get inside your own head again as
Mhm.
you try to redistribute that message outwards. What are your thoughts? And this is a two-pronged question because a lot of people today, if not everyone, leans into AI to repurpose their message. Now, when you're talking in real life, there is no AI. You gotta stand on your own 2 feet. You're having a conversation. People are listening to you, or it's the dialogue that's going back and forth. But let's have that conversation when different ways of communicating start to cross and impact our thinking. Do we want to
The
go
ways
ahead?
of communicating online, or like, can you?
Yeah, let's talk about that. I know it was very uh, question full. This could have been five different questions, but the importance to help people gain or regain confidence that where you communicate and where you show up, be comfortable that things and people may respond differently, and it's perfectly fine.
That also ties back to the same fear that we were talking about speaking from stages. Like, how would people think about me? If they're gonna judge me negatively, or would I be making mistakes, or would I be? Is my self worth attached to those mistakes or the way people think about me? Same goes to your presence online. When you write a piece of content on, let's take an example of LinkedIn, there will be at least 10% of the people that will instantly hate your message, no matter what the message is.
Hmm.
That's not coming from me, that's coming from Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss has this 10% hater rule. No matter what you do, 10% of the people will always find a way to take it personally and negatively. So have that mindset that what someone else thinks about you has nothing to do with your self worth. The way you show up, either in that text format or video format or workshop format. But having said that, you should also do something to get better, to level up your game. This is my first LinkedIn Live, to be honest. And if I don't do another one until next year, I can't expect to get better on LinkedIn Lives. So maybe this is a pitch to you to invite me later. But but the other thing is that we can't expect to do things the same way as we are doing on autopilot. We have to be intentional to get better. So people will always judge. Some people will always judge, but we should not focus, or we should not let that judgment define our self worth. And that again ties back to how you see yourself as a person, as a communicator, as a LinkedIn creator. That has so much to say about how you show up.
Yeah, that's well said. Thank you. And I did not know this was your first LinkedIn live.
Very first.
Uh, this is hey, this is all about first moments. I enjoy hearing that this is your first because we now have a baseline. We've got you through a threshold.
Yep.
You are well respected as a communications expert, and you're standing here telling me that this is your first time going live. You know your subject matter, and to share your vulnerability to say this is your first live, that takes a lot of courage, and I commend you for saying that because I tell people all the time it's okay to share
Yeah.
vulnerabilities. It's okay to let others know where you are in your journey and to build that in public. People get to see your progression, people get to celebrate the milestones with you. And this is all about building trust, building social authority, building credibility. And for those who hear our message, They may resonate with what you're saying and appreciate the fact that you're saying, hey, this is my first time. And it will encourage someone, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect,
That's a win-win.
right? America and Waqas did it. It was their first time
Yeah.
and they got through it. And they're going to learn from it and they're going to perhaps look at what can we do differently. And that's all we're really asking of people. It's like bring yourself, bring your message, and continue to improve and develop and focus on you and your self worth. Know that you're an expert in whatever subject matter you're being asked to speak and have confidence in yourself. Believe in yourself. You'd be surprised how many people will reach out and say, hey, you did a great job. Or I'd love to connect with you because you really resonated with me. It just happens. Go
Just,
ahead. I think,
just yeah, one thought. The clarification is that this is not my first time live in the workshops. I have my monthly workshops, but
yes,
in those workshops, I'm prepared. I know my game. But as an impromptu conversation, this is the first time that I'm going live with someone without even knowing what the questions would be, how I will respond, and where I will trip. And I would fail definitely at least different spots in the live, and that happens to everyone as we discussed.
absolutely. And I purposely leave out questions. Sometimes people who I invite to come on share the stage with me. They will ask me, "Can you send me the questions in advance?" And I, I tell them, it's like I'd rather not. I prefer not to.
Mhm.
I want this to be a natural conversation. I don't want you to just get inside your own head and write down all the answers because it's only going to make you nervous. All the questions I'm going to ask, I get from your social footprint. And these are all things that you confidently speak about and I see in your content. And we're just going to have a conversation and see where it goes from there. And more often than not, and in fact, I'm going to say 100% of the time, I have passed successfully, not putting anyone on the spot. There is a disclaimer though when people ask me, like if I ask you a question and you can't answer
Mhm.
because you lied on social media and you misrepresented yourself, that's on you. That's not on me. I'm
Yeah,
going to ask you questions
great,
based on the information that
great.
I find when I do a search on either a browser based search or an AI based search. What is Waqas best known for? That's what I'm going to use.
And one more comment on that vulnerability piece that you shared uh, is that I am really like an open book. I don't hide my past failures. I don't hide my blunders. I have been into that media situation in Missouri. That was the lowest my self confidence can go. It hit the rock bottom that day. And I am here having this conversation with you without having any nerves and talking about all those things unprepared. It's all because of that incident. And sharing my vulnerability with people, being this raw, authentic version of myself,
Hmm.
what invites people to get in touch with me. I get DMs just because people say you're authentic. We can relate with with what you're saying. You're not a polished version of yourself. You're authentic version of yourself, either online or offline or LinkedIn post. So that's why the way I feel it, vulnerability connects people on a deeper emotional level, not on surface level. That's why I don't
Absolutely.
hide anything from you.
Absolutely. And I think we can both agree, and everyone in the audience listening live or to this replay, they will all agree. And I say this confidently, we're all craving human connection.
Especially today.
A-
Especially
AI has taken over jobs, processes, workflows. And when we hear someone speak, it stops us in our tracks. And people are craving this. So don't don't make it perfect. Don't make it polished. I in fact encourage people keep it raw and unedited. And you will have an audience for that raw and unedited content and that messaging. Don't worry. It it does have a home, it does have a place, and people will consume it because they're looking for this kind of real life conversations. And Amy's point, people love open conversations.
especially today, as I said, in AI age, where everybody can go on LinkedIn, ask ChatGPT to write something, and then just post as is. I mean, whenever our brain detects this AI, we don't want to read. That's like natural. That's like something human instinct. I don't know what is the science behind it, but if I see a post, if I detect this is it AI written, I'll just skip it immediately. And that's why it same is applicable to your presence in person, the way we are here today. We are not in the text post, but here we are in the video. If I just have this polished persona telling you all about my PhD, I have a PhD by the way, and then not talk about my failures, who will connect with me from the audience? I don't think even a single person would connect with me.
Yeah, I totally agree. It has been a wonderful conversation, and we don't want to give away too much here. You have a valuable workshop that I'm going to let you close the conversation with on how people can join, how people can participate. But one question before we get to that point, for anyone listening who feels deeply about what we've discussed, what's the first step that they should take even before looking up your workshop?
Okay, so this is not for a specific niche. This is gonna be. I'll try to keep it general so it's
Hmm.
applicable to a wider audience. We have been taught, we have been trained to fear the nerves that show up in those high stake moments. But I'm going to tell you that those nerves can work for you. Once you understand why those nerves show up in those high stake moments, you can train your nervous system to use the energy from those nerves to help you. If I'm having this conversation, the one that I'm having with you and with these people, with someone like my friends, I wouldn't be this vocal. I am the most soft spoken person in my real life. Pe- People, my family tells me, Waqas, speak up. What are you saying? We can't understand you. Since I'm here with you, this is a high stake moment for me. I have an important message to share. That's why my nervous system gave me those nerves when I came here in the beginning. But I am using that to be more vocal, to be more passionate, and to kind of say things and be an example to people that I cannot be in normal situations. So those nerves can be helpful to you, and you're not alone or unique if you experience those nerves. That happens to every single speaker, whether they admit it or not. They have it. They might call it excitement. They might call it, their lucky charm. But that's the nerves helping them because they have trained themselves to get to leverage those nerves. So the key message here is to don't feel you're alone, something is wrong, that you have those nerves. It happens to us all. And try to see how you can leverage them to so that they can work for you, not against you.
That's fabulous. Thank you. Let's let's wrap it up. I want to thank you for spending the last hour with us. I want to thank those who are in the audience listening across the three channels that we're streaming. And I want to thank those of you who will come back and listen to the replay and be part of the repurposing and the redistribution of this conversation across the different mediums. Now, for people who want to connect with you and take this to the next step, how can they get a hold of you?
I am spending most of my time on LinkedIn and LinkedIn alone. Uh, that's the only place that people can get in touch with me. I have a monthly workshop every month, and in that workshop, I teach people how to train your nervous system so it can work for you, not against you. So it doesn't really happen overnight. You have to first of all understand the intricacies of how we get a response that can help us in those high stake moments. So that's what I teach people, specifically tech leaders who have accomplished a lot in their careers, in their professional life. But when it comes to communicating those expertise in those high stake moments, in those boardrooms, they cannot really find. That's what I call the authority gap. They have the authority, they can't just communicate it. I teach that in my workshops, how you can get the confidence from within without relying on those bandages, on those crutches.
Fabulous. So when you look at the QR code, if you scan the QR code, that will take you directly to Waqas's LinkedIn profile, where you can learn more about his workshops and connect with him and follow him on LinkedIn. This has been a fabulous conversation. Once again, thank you so very much for being part of it. And I'd like to thank everyone once again. We're going to close the room. And until next time, it has been an absolute pleasure. Bye for now.